I designed M3GAN to protect Katie from feeling lonely. She will recognize you as her primary user. And when you do that, you're gonna pair with her.
Crazy. It's insane, right?
So we have this movie, M3GAN, and I'm so thrilled to talk to y'all about the formation of the character of the AI doll, but my first question is very basic. When y'all were on set, if you were, what was your first interaction and your first impression when you saw the doll in flesh or plastic, I guess?
Well, first it was a test, right? We actually saw it before the movie even started shooting. What was your response when you first saw that
when
test,
we saw
right?
the early test of it, I was like, holy smoke, this thing actually looks very real.
Yeah.
You know, like they did this incredible animatronic head of I don't want to talk too much about it, but this animatronic head of M3GAN, you know, like the way she moved her eyes, the skin texture, it was pretty incredible. It was actually very exciting at the same time because, you know, up until then, you know, it's really just ideas on paper, right? On script form, and you're not quite sure if you're going to be able to pull it off. So when that test came along and it proved to us that we can actually make this work, it took the whole movie in our heads to a whole different level.
Yeah, it was exciting. We were trying to ride a line so that when you're watching the movie, you forget for a minute that it's AI, and then you're reminded harshly that it's AI. And I think the movie doesn't work unless you can really suspend disbelief like that. And I think that the way that M3GAN was created really does that.
And it's a sort of the perfect evolution of the scary doll sort of thing that we've seen in movies before, where you can even go back to the Twilight Zone episode when there's a ventriloquist dummy.
Yeah.
And then you have Fats from Magic.
Yes.
And then we have obviously Chucky and Annabelle. But this is more like it's the artificial intelligence, it's the technology that's making it scary as opposed to something that's paranormal. So how do you make that shift and still like maintain the scariness of it?
Yeah, we knew that we were playing in a very established subgenre, but that doesn't mean that, you know, we can't go in there and move things about, right? Try new things and definitely change out the engine. If the engine in the past for previous scary doll movies have been supernatural, of supernatural origin, you know, it just makes sense to kind of do something a bit different. And given the state of the world and how technology is so prevalent in our everyday life, it just felt naturally that it wants to go in that direction. And listen, you know, the AI world can be pretty terrifying. You know, it can be incredibly useful for us as well, but it's also pretty scary. And of course, this being a horror film, we're leaning more to the scary.
We're leaning to the scary side.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's almost scarier in a way than anything supernatural because I feel like we have so many supernatural-based horror movies that I know how to get myself out of that. I know I can call a priest, I can call an exorcist, right. But with this, if I lose my password, I'm screwed. So I don't know how to infiltrate an AI that's gone amiss. And I think that's a really fun sandbox for y'all to play in because it's such new technology.
Yeah, I think that's good. There's nowhere to hide from AI. I think that's kind of good. That'll be the tagline for the sequel. There's nowhere to hide from AI.
Yeah, no, it is. I mean, we've become so reliant on technology that the idea that these things that we create to help us live our daily lives could actually turn against us. You know, it's like the classic cautionary tales that you've seen in past movies, in books and stuff like that. And it, you know, it's been a while since there's been a movie like that, so it's kind of cool to kind of go back into, and especially now, you know, given how much more AI has become such a big thing in recent times, right? That I think this movie has become somewhat very relevant.
And we think of, you know, at least probably all of us when we were kids, we didn't have this AI and we didn't have streaming stuff, so you go to the video store. So when I watch a movie, I still put myself back in Blockbuster, and I'm like, well, what section does this movie fit into? I'm clearly stocking it in the horror section, but there's a lot of dark comedy in here too, and those are the two movie types that you love going to the theater to see opening weekend, right? Because you get that instant reaction. Is that why comedy and horror work so well together?
I mean, I think partially what you're saying, I think the reason it works well is comedy makes horror more effective. Because if you laugh in a movie, you relax and your defenses are down. You kind of forget for a second that you're going to be scared any minute. And then when the scare comes, it's much more effective because you're not ready for it.
And then you laugh after the scare because everybody else in the theater just got scared. And then you're laughing at yourself.
Again.
Yeah. I mean, that's a common thing, you know, like when you build up the tension, if you do it successfully, you build up the tension and then you pay it off and the audiences end up, you know, they scream, they cover their eyes, and they want to release that tension by laughing at something, right? And just the nature of M3GAN, you know, like the story of M3GAN, it leans into something that can be very darkly humorous, and to not shy away from that was important for us.
Okay, so one of the humorous moments that, again, is still scary, but it's also, you have to kind of chuckle, is M3GAN's dance moves. So I feel like the dance moves, I don't know if y'all had anything to do with the inspiration for that. I've never been to a wedding with you gentlemen. I don't know what it looks like, but it feels like it's a mix of like real good movements, but then also like the drunk person at the wedding reception.
I don't know where those dance moves originate. Half from our actor, half from the director, half from God. I don't know. What do you think? I'm not sure.
I mean, that's really it. I mean, you know, the great thing about what Gerard can do so well is, you know, he can kind of walk that fine line of, you know, creating scary, suspenseful moments, but then kind of know when to have fun and do the funny bits, right? And you know, M3GAN dancing, you know, during that little moment before she turns dark, just adds to her personality, adds to her sassiness. But there's so much about what she does that makes her who she is, and that is also a part of the evolution of the story, right? She's learning things from this little girl, and this little girl's teaching her how to sing and dance, and she's just applying that to her murderous ways.
Yeah, the singing as well. I had the pleasure of talking with the incredible Allison Williams, who's fantastic in this movie, and asked her what pop song could M3GAN sing that would ruin that song for her. She said a Barbie World, which is a pretty good answer. I was thinking like maybe M3GAN could rickroll us, but do y'all have a song that M3GAN would just completely ruin for you if you heard that creepy doll sing it?
I don't know if it will ruin it for me. I actually will probably like it even more, so I'm not the right person to ask this. If you want to give me the creepier version, I'm all for it.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I did want to briefly ask y'all about, you know, there's buzz in the industry right now. There could be a production company merging and with one another. Is there things for horror fans to get excited about you two working more together, and maybe even some franchises crossing over potentially in the future?
Yeah, well, we're working towards concluding an agreement where would be two merged companies, which would be really exciting. I think what would be in store for horror fans if that happens is more great original horror movies, and then obviously we'd be working with IP too, but trying to keep those movies also feeling kind of fresh and new and different. I think that's one of the things the two companies do well on their own and would do even better together.
We talked about Annabelle briefly, but there's been this internet beef. Apparently Chucky is getting in his feelings about this new doll on the block. So how do we feel about Chucky sort of needling M3GAN online, and then how does M3GAN respond to that? I mean, these are two of arguably, along with Annabelle, the most famous scary puppets in the history of movies. So how do we settle this?
I would love to see the Avengers of creepy puppet dolls. Them coming together, either a versus version or them teaming together to take on a more powerful entity. I want to see that version.
It would be the King Kong and Godzilla, where they fight initially because they don't know each other, and then they can team up, and who's going to stop not one, not two, but three scary kids dolls all together.
That would be good.
I want to see that film.
Me too. I do too.
What is it about that inanimate, you know, it's a child's play thing. And so you two are masters of horror. Why are we so scared by that? Why does that lend itself so easily to the horror genre?
Well, just because child's play, anything toy related, it's supposed to be innocent, right? And so the idea here that you come along and you corrupt this innocent object that was designed for, you know, for happy, playful things, suddenly now takes on a malevolent life. That is where the sort of disconnect come from, and that's where doing things like that is kind of what makes stuff like that work on a psychological level. You know, you don't expect your doll that you love, that you grew up with, your teddy bear, whatever, to get up and try to strangle you in the middle of the night. But the idea that it could do that is what's terrifying.
And I think when you're young, that's the objects. Those are the objects that you animate. When you're young, those are the objects that you imagine are coming to life all the time that you're a kid. So even as an adult, when they actually do come to light, it's like and they're bad, it's your worst fear come true.
So in your terms, is Toy Story one of the scariest franchises in the history?
It really is. It truly is. Toy Story is ultimately one of the scariest
nightmares
movies in that scary puppet doll genre. But they're cute. They're very cute.
They're very cute until they're not, right?
Until they're not,
That's
right.
the thing about scary movies like this. So finally, I guess I know 2023 is going to be a huge year for both of y'all individually, then maybe together as well. What can audiences expect from your crop of movies that you're producing, you're writing, that you're working on next year?
After M3GAN, we have Exorcist, and we have another couple of movies that haven't been announced yet that hopefully will come out next year. And I think audiences can expect to be scared in new and different ways. That's what I hope to always deliver in our movies.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm sorry. Let's just talk about it. Hey.
Let me go.
Whoa. Hey, what's going on? Hey, Katie.
Go.
What are you doing? Stop it. Katie, calm down.
Let her go.
M3GAN, turn off.
Are you sure?
So I love M3GAN as like the next sort of iconic horror movie villain. Who is the horror movie villain for you in your formative years that you're like, oh, that's the one to stay away from?
Oh,
That's
gosh,
the
what a
scariest
good
one for me.
question. The girl from The Ring, 100%.
Samara?
Oh my God. To this day, like shower drains, televisions, like all of it is just like phones, scary. I like can't, she's just in there deeply. And I watched it a lot when it came out and too much. Wells, I just keep coming back to images from it that are scary. Cliffs.
Even just her like combing her hair is
Literally
freaky.
a girl. And no matter how many times I saw a scary movie, which was a lot, and I saw the parodies of it, it doesn't matter. Like, it's just haunting to see someone with long, dark hair combing their hair, looking in a mirror. It's just scary.
There's a little connective tissue between someone like Samara and M3GAN, where at first they're just like, they look like, oh, you're just like an innocent little
girl.
kid, but
Yeah.
now something has changed.
Something
So
has changed.
the
Right.
first time you were introduced to M3GAN in the plastic, like on set,
Yeah.
what was that moment like?
Well, I don't want to spoil like how M3GAN comes to be because I think it's better to enjoy it with some amount of the illusion. But uncanny, unforgettable. When I first met her, she was in repose, and that was deeply chilling. She was just alone in like a corner of a sound stage. People were doing camera tests off on one side, and she was next to like a table with props. And I just walked in, and she was just standing there, and I was like, I'm not gonna survive this movie. This is so terrifying.
Is there a temptation, I wonder, because like, I'm curious if you were to pair with M3GAN, right?
Yeah.
What sort of personality traits do you think M3GAN would pick up from you? How would M3GAN change?
In my dreams, she just becomes like the most on it executive assistant, where she knows what food I'm about to order before I order it and it shows up. Like, those are the ways I would use her. I mean, the temperature thing, could she administer COVID tests? Like, that would be super useful if she just looks at you and she's like, oh, I have bad news. And you're like, what? She's like, there was just a COVID particle that passed in front of your face and you got it. That would be amazing.
Okay,
Like,
so she's kind of like the Alfred to your Batman.
perfectly put. Please switch seats with me. That is exactly the way I would put it.
But I mean, you kind of got to put some superhero oomph into this role too. So
A little bit.
What is your advice if in the future we all have these
Yeah.
AI companions and you got to tussle with one of them? How do you
Put
fight
ethics in there. Just program. Oh, you mean once everything's failed, guardrails are off,
one?
we've messed up.
Yeah.
Go for the CPU.
Okay.
That's all I'll say.
Go for the CPU. Okay.
Yeah.
And my final question. This might be the most important question that you may have all day.
Okay, I'm ready.
So M3GAN does enjoy singing and performing.
She does, yes.
What pop song could M3GAN sing that would completely freak you out?
I don't know. Oh my God, I wish I had like an instant. I mean, Barbie Girl would be really haunting. To go
Oh.
peak millennial with it.
Yeah.
Like a send up of another doll would just be sort of chilling.
Okay, so M3GAN, maybe not a singer dancer for you, but definitely like the new celebrity bodyguard.
Yeah, that sounds great. That sounds great. Honestly, a bodyguard that looks like that is sort of subverting expectations in a way I love.
Don't! Stop!
What the hell is that?
You should probably run.
Unprovoked is all we will push you downhill. Bitter as much as we're sweet.
I won't let anything harm you.
Congratulations on the movie. I wanted to ask you about M3GAN the doll and the first time you got to sort of be on set and see her in the flesh, or plastic, as it were.
I mean, it's funny because there's so much that goes into making her, and you're really nervous about whether or not she's going to come to life in the way you want her to. But you know, it was helpful to just have the cast and crew there when we all kind of really met M3GAN for the first time, and you could just tell instantly by their reaction that we had something really special. Like, she's hypnotizing.
So there was an unveiling of M3GAN for everybody to kind of experience it together.
Well, there was, because the people who designed her, we were originally supposed to shoot the film in Montreal, and so the people who designed her, when we moved the filming because of COVID to New Zealand, they had to come to New Zealand, and so they unloaded her off a truck and all those things, and had to pretty her up and all that. So there was a big unveiling, and so everyone gathered around for it, and there were other aspects to M3GAN. There was like the M3GAN bot, and so we had this big show and tell of all these things, and yeah.
It's like you're wheeling Hannibal Lecter down for the first time.
Yeah, exactly. I know. It was like something out of Madame Tussauds, I guess. You know, it's like this thing who's kind of, she's real, but she's not real, and you know.
It's a cool hybrid doll in the movie, as far as the premise goes with the artificial intelligence, but also just for you having the practical doll to work with. But then there's also a lot of CGI, I imagine. So how many times was M3GAN actually like acting in a scene versus the CGI in post-production?
It's hard to say the ratio. We had all the faculties we needed to make M3GAN on hand at all times, and sometimes it was just a difficult decision of thinking. Yeah, I remember in pre-production it was so often like, oh, we should go with this version of M3GAN, or should we go with this version of M3GAN? And there was confusion sometimes, and you'd end up on set and they'd say, oh, I thought we were doing it with this version. It's like, oh no, okay, well, let's just go with this version and see how it goes. And so, yeah, it was very complicated.
I'm curious for you, just in your formative years when you're coming into this love of film, when did you realize that horror, and there's a lot of comedy in this movie, so when did you realize that it was a perfect marriage sometimes in a film to get equal doses of horror and comedy?
Well, my first film, Housebound, was like a funny idea that lent itself to being a horror movie, hence, you know, why it's a horror movie. But I was a horror fan, but I don't think I was equipped at that time to make one. And I learned the hard way just how difficult it is to create tension and how cinematography is so important and what the camera's doing. But having watched that and sat in a room full of people that are audibly reacting to everything was just intoxicating. And so the idea of doing that again, it was just, yeah, it was a no-brainer. And that's what's the greatest thing I could say about doing a comedy horror is you're well aware of how the film's going.
Yeah, the audience will let you know right away. I imagine there's always going to be a response to the dance moves. And so I'm curious how you got those dance moves for M3GAN, because it's half like super talent, and then it's also just half like drunk person at a wedding. So how do you come up with the moves?
Well, I have to give credit to a local dance teacher who, one of the performer of that in the film, it was her dance teacher. It was a real family affair, and you know, they figured it out themselves. I gave them a brief and said, this is what I want, this is the timing I want, this is the song I want, and we had like about 7 or 8 things, and you know, lined up. But this is just the first one we got to do because we were out of time. But it, you know, it's become. I mean, it's been fun to see it just embraced, and I guess it's easy enough for people to do and get involved. If it was too tricky, I don't know.